Hey guys, in the second part of this two-part tutorial, I'm going to show you how to use the blur tool in Photoshop to add motion to this static photograph. So let's get started. So today we're going to basically focus 100% in Photoshop. And like I said before, I'm going to show you guys how to basically get rid of some of the unwanted reflections in the car. Maybe clean up this little telephone line up here. And then last but not least, add motion to the wheels and to the entire image so it looks like it's sort of like a drive-by shot. But let's begin by cleaning up the car a little bit. I don't really like some of these reflections that are coming up in this car. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna choose one area, focus on it, and then start sort of brushing away. What I usually do is I duplicate the layer just in case I screw up. And then let's just focus on one part here. So I'm gonna maybe focus on this little part here where you see all these little reflections of all the trees. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna select it first using the lasso tool. And for the purpose of this tutorial, I'm not gonna be 100% accurate like I normally would be. But just wanna show you guys sort of the techniques that I use to clean up some of these images. Okay, so I'm going to select a larger area so I can sample from it. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the clone stamp tool, reduce it in size, make sure the hardness is all the way down to 0. I'm going to hit Alt Option to sample an area. And then I'm going to start, let's start brushing it away basically. Already looks much better. I apologize for my computer fan. It tends to come on for no absolute reason. I'm not really doing anything very strenuous right now. Just gonna pick this area here. And I am going to do the same thing basically. Just gonna clean that up later. Oops. You see how I kind of left some of these hard edges around here? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take the patch tool. Just going to go around it. Select the part that I want to kind of blend in. Move it to wherever I feel is the appropriate area, and then just leave it, and it actually fixes it for you. So it's a pretty handy tool. Do that for all the parts. And for this little part here. So as you can see, that already made a pretty big difference in my opinion. Cleaned up some of those branches. Later on, we're gonna take these little branches here and actually blur them, because to give the effect that the car is moving as well. Let's move on to the front bumper here. Again, I'm not gonna do the entire car, but I'm just gonna show you guys of the techniques that I kind of use to clean up cars when I do this sort of stuff. So for the front bumper, I feel like there's a lot of reflections going on here with the buildings in the front and all that stuff. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna draw again with using a lasso tool. I'm pretty comfortable using a lasso tool, which is the reason why I'm using it. But if you guys are more comfortable using a pen tool, I would definitely encourage doing that, because with the pen tool, you can adjust all the different anchor points. And sometimes the lasso tool, when you accidentally click something or it just screws up on you and you have to restart over again. So I would definitely highly encourage to use the pen tool. Basically doing the same thing, just using a different tool. Actually, let's go back and up here. So this is a part of the bumper that has a lot of highlights in it, like right below it. I'm gonna leave that alone for now. So when I get the part of the bumper that's kind of like black. I gotta. Okay. You know what? Let's go down here. I'm just gonna blend it in nicely here. Okay, so what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna sample by clicking Alt Option. I'm gonna choose the brush tool. I'm gonna sample, let's say, this dark area here. I'm gonna increase the size, maybe to, yeah, that seems about right. I'm gonna make sure the hardness is all the way down. I'm gonna leave it at 100% right now, and I'm just gonna start, maybe not 100%. Let's just try 50. This is all trial and error. You know what? That's not dark enough, so use this black instead. Okay. Gonna get rid of this area here as well. And I'm gonna blend it in a little bit down here, so it goes to this lighter color here. Yep. So much better already. Before, after. I'm gonna go to the second part. I'm gonna get rid of some of these reflections in here. Again, I'm gonna use the sample the color and then just kind of get rid of some of this stuff here. I also don't like all the little details that are coming up in this bumper area. So I'm just gonna get rid of some of this stuff in here. Gonna put the opacity all the way up to 100. Sample. Bit too much detail. You can see the radiator, I believe. So I'm gonna get rid of that. we could get rid of this as well. So what we could do with this is use the clone stamp tool, use a larger sample area, click Alt Option, and sample just like that. But this time reduce the opacity to about 50 again. So we're gonna slowly kind of fade it out. Yeah, that looks cool. Just gonna get rid of this little thing right here. It's much better. Now let's go to the wheel well right in here. So for this particular black spot here, let's try the heal tool. Not the heal tool. What am I talking about? Keep getting these mixed up. The patch tool. So let's see. Yeah, that looks pretty good to me. So I'm just gonna clean it up a little bit by selecting this area. So oops. Let's try the clone stamp tool again. It's not perfect, but let's just leave it. Obviously it looks better. Let's go back and forth between the before, after, before, after. Cool, looks good. So what I'm gonna do here, let's see. With this particular angle on the door, I'm gonna try and bring out the highlights a little bit. So I'm just gonna kind of eyeball this, but what I'm gonna do is actually, let's use the pen tool for this example. So I just want to bring out some of the details and the curves of the car. So let's just sample it. Double clicking on the layer will bring up this little thing, and then let's just take this part here. So as you can see, it doesn't look that great, but what we can do is turn the opacity down just a little bit. See what I did there? Kind of brought out that particular part of the car. So let's see. I mean, there's other ways of doing that. I can also add a gradient to make it more realistic, obviously, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time doing this. This is just kind of one way of kind of bringing out the curve, like the different lines in the car. Is obviously you might have to draw different shapes to kind of bring those back. Again, it's not perfect, but it will do. So let's just bring that up a little bit, 40%. Okay. Okay, so I'm gonna merge the shape one here and the layer that I was working on. Right click, merge layers. So you can see the before and after. So I think I'm okay with the car. I mean, I could go in and clean all this up as well, but I think you guys get the point of how you can kind of clean up different elements on the car using different tools. What I've been basically using is the patch tool, the clone stamp tool, and the brush tool to kind of draw over certain reflections on the car, add certain elements to the car. Again, this is not perfect, but I'm just going to show you guys an idea of how you can do it. And then let's just get rid of this telephone line up here. What we're going to do with this is basically use the clone stamp tool. Again, sample right next to it. And then, oops, opacities all the way to 100. I always have my feather all the way down. I find it blends a lot better. Although in this particular example, I'm not really doing a great job. So let's do a larger sample. No one's going to notice anything because, I mean, this is such a random part of the picture. It's the sky, right? So you want to keep sampling right next to whatever you're kind of trying to take out. There. Looks pretty good. If you want to even take out, you know, some of the leaves, you can do that as well. Again, I have my feather all the way down. I sample next to it. Or you can use the patch tool, which is even easier. You just basically circle around the object you want to get rid of, move it, that's it. Super simple, but I'm not going to get into it too much. So that's it for cleaning up the car. Next, what I'm going to do is add motion to this picture around in the environment, to the wheels, and even to the reflections in the car. So now we're going to focus on making the wheels spin, basically. What you always want to do, like I said before, is you want to make sure you duplicate the layers. So let's just call this one the original. This one is going to be the base. And let's duplicate that twice. Call this one the front wheel. And this is the rear wheel. Okay, so I'm just going to turn this layer off for a second, focus on the front wheel. So I'm just going to assume that you guys are working in Photoshop CC. Otherwise, you would have to be using a blur radial blur to add motion to the wheels, which is a lot more painstaking. And I could dedicate a tutorial just for that. But I'm just going to assume you guys have Photoshop CC. And in this case scenario, what we're going to be using is under filter, you will go under blur gallery and then go under spin blur. So once you're in here, it takes a moment to update. Okay, so you can see a circle with a boundary line on it. What you can do is you can see the cursor changes. You can actually drag it holding shift, and you can change the diameter of the circle. And when you place it over whatever place on the photograph, that's what the area of the photograph is going to look like it's spinning. So let's just reduce that size again. Let's make sure that the center of the wheel is in the center of the circle. There's these little dots in here as well, which you can drag in and out. So that's kind of as far as the spin going to go inside that circle. So I can show you an example. When I place them in here, it stops right there, but then you drag it all the way out to the outer edges, and it does it all the way to the outer edges. I want to skew the circle a little bit. Oops. So skew it just like that. And then if I zoom in, see this little thing here? If you drag it, you can actually put less and more spin on on the effect. So go that, like that. That's too much, I think. I'm just gonna maybe bring it down to like, I think that's still a little bit too much. I think that's appropriate right there. So see, I can still see some of the tires. So what I have to do is skew it up just a little bit. There you go. And I think that looks pretty good to me. So once I'm happy, satisfied with the outcome, you can select high quality. I'm not going to do it, just may take too long to load. Just hit OK. So there you go. That's the front wheel. Now what happened was, because the blur went over the front bumper, this is why I duplicated the layer. What I want to do now is I want to mask that part out so it doesn't look like this. So because obviously the wheel is inside the bumper, so I want to make sure the bumper looks normal and the wheel is still spinning. So what I want to do is I want to take the front wheel, I want to put a mask on it. I'm going to select the brush tool and make sure that it's selected to black. And what it does is I'm going to start brushing away that front wheel layer on the mask using the brush tool. See how far it goes. So, and then I can correct it. I'm going to show you guys how. You just basically flip it to white and you can start drawing it back in. I'm not going to be super precise. I'm just going to show you guys exactly what I did here. Again, I'm just going to, oop. Cool. So that's the front wheel. Oh, still have to add this back in. Cool. So that looks good. So that's the front wheel. Now let's go to the rear wheel. So select that layer, blur gallery, spin blur. It's humongous right now, so just gonna reduce the size. As you can hear, this is quite strenuous on my computer. So I'm actually going to rotate it. Move these points all the way out to the outer edges. I'm not gonna worry about all the stuff outside the wheel, because once again I'm gonna mask that once I'm finished with the wheel here. Just want to make sure that it's in the center. Okay, I'm actually pretty happy with it right there. So what I'm gonna do is hit OK. And obviously this does not look correct. So what I'm gonna do again is select the mask to add layer mask, and I'm gonna start deleting the blur by brushing it out. Select the black color of the brush tool, and what it's doing basically, it's revealing the base layer behind it. So probably went too far with it. Again, I'm not being super precise, but so what's going on now is the rear wheel layer is only visible. So what I'm just gonna do basically is just gonna select the portion of the wheel on the rear wheel, hit Command J, duplicate that layer, delete the original one. So now you can only see the back wheel. Again, I'm just gonna maybe quickly use the eraser tool this time to erase that wheel. Okay, so you got the rear wheel, you got the front wheel, and you got the base. So once I'm happy with the wheels, I'm gonna take all three layers and I'm just gonna merge them. You can either leave them like it is now, but I prefer to kind of cut down on the amount of layers that I'm using, especially if I know I'm not gonna go back and edit them in any way. So I'm just gonna merge them. So now we have the wheels moving. So next up, we're gonna do the rest of the environment, and then we're gonna do the reflections in the car.